Commission has launched it with the global education company Kaplan. They say the aim is to reduce some of the financial barriers students face in advancing their education and their careers.
The slow economic shockwaves of government layoffs.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by The Economist, devoted to providing independent journalism that makes sense of the news shaping the world. More at economist.com or with The Economist app, newsletters, and podcasts.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. Current and former workers at the U.S. Agency for International Development are being allowed back into their offices in Washington, D.C. for a second day today for 15 minutes to pack up their belongings. But the federal government's layoffs are being felt across the country, not just in D.C. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer talked to a USAID contractor in Oklahoma about what's happening there.
47-year-old Patricia Gross has worked as an independent government contractor, a gig worker, since 2018. She, her husband, and 3 young sons live just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Nonprofits hired her to write applications for federal grants, mostly from USAID and the Agriculture Department. Now the nonprofits are out of work, and so is Gross. So the family is dependent on her husband's salary.
I think right now we're okay, but I mean, it's concerning. Last year I did really well and we bought a house last summer based on my income, increasing our family income.
Gross says she made about $75,000 last year. She has a side gig helping people write their resumes. She only made about $1,000 doing that in 2024. Now, former resume clients are back. They're federal workers or contractors who are also out of work. Gross says her heart breaks for them, but there's no time to waste.
The advice I've been giving my clients is that people are mourning now. And if you wait a month, everybody's going to start really looking for a job. And there's not that many jobs out there.
Gross herself applied for a few jobs last weekend on LinkedIn, but she got messages back telling her, sorry, the position's been canceled. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer for Marketplace.
Boycotts gained fame in the U.S. in the 50s and 60s as part of the civil rights movement, but they are used across the political spectrum today. Some faith-based groups have planned boycotts during Lent to protest DEI. Another campaign that's gained some traction on social media recently calls for an economic blackout today, a total boycott of all consumer spending by Americans to protest the influence of billionaires, corporations, and political parties. The idea originated with a little-known activist group called the People's Union USA. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman has more.
People's Union founder John Schwartz posted on Instagram that he doesn't expect most Americans to boycott all retail today.
The majority of them are still going to shop on this Friday. That's not the point. The point is that those who don't are choosing to stand together
and build momentum against big corporations and the politicians who support them. But, says management professor Braden King at Northwestern's Kellogg School,
lots of consumers will say they're going to boycott. Very few consumers do.
King says boycotts rarely have a lasting economic impact.
Even if, let's say, 5% of consumers are going to boycott, that would be a huge number. They'll probably, if they need to buy something, just go and do it the following day. And so it wouldn't really show up in the revenue numbers.
A national consumer boycott could still make a difference, says sociologist David S. Meyer at UC Irvine.
It's an opportunity to talk about a whole variety of grievances, and it gives people something to do.
Like get involved.
People who decide to boycott are more likely to call their congressional representative, go out to a demonstration,
and vote against politicians who back social and economic policies they don't like. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
The PCE price index is out this morning. Prices rose 0.3% in January, same as the month before, for an annual inflation rate of 2.5%, slightly down from 2.6% measured the month before. With that, let's do the numbers. Dow futures are up 0.5%. S&P futures up 0.3%. NASDAQ futures up 0.1%. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 4.250%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Think or Swim. More at schwab.com.
Amazon yesterday unveiled its first ever quantum computing chip. This follows similar announcements from Microsoft and Google. Private sector investment in quantum computing has grown tenfold in the past decade. Marketplace's Daniel Ackerman looked into why tech firms are spending so much on a technology that hasn't yet actually proven its commercial viability.
Your everyday computer runs on bits. A quantum computer runs on quantum bits, or qubits. And these qubits harness the behavior of subatomic particles, which, says MIT research scientist Andrew McAfee, can make them a pain to work with.
You have to kind of coax them into being, and you've got to wrangle them in these very weird conditions.
For instance, he says MIT has a quantum computing lab on campus that is the coldest place, period.
In other words, down closer to absolute zero than any other place in the universe we know about. And the reason is to kind of convince qubits to hang around a little bit longer and come together in ways that we can harness.
On the most basic level, an ordinary computer bit is like an on-off switch. It either represents 1 or 0. Qubits work differently, says Heather West, a research manager at IDC.
Qubits rely on quantum properties that allow them to hold the values of 0, 1, or any value in between.
She says quantum processors could do calculations that are functionally impossible with today's computers.
That will allow for scientists and engineers in the long run to be able to solve complex problems that have eluded them.
Quantum computers could speed up things like drug discovery, materials science, or the pricing of risk in the insurance industry. But Amy Webb, CEO of Future Today Institute, says it could take years to get there.
This is a field that really has a very long horizon ahead of it in terms of research and development, scaling, and getting these concepts into market.
And that can be tricky for companies seeking investor dollars.
Because investors have ever shortening expectations for when they're going to see a return.
But quantum computing is likely to become so valuable, says Andrew McAfee of MIT, it makes sense for tech firms to spend on it now, at least the firms with deep enough pockets.
That allows them to extend their timeline beyond, next quarter or what we're going to put in the annual report next year.
Because McAfee says for whoever manages to scale quantum computing, the returns will be there, eventually. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
And in New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Tune in at 4:30 for a wrap-up of the day's business news on Marketplace here on 91.5 WBEZ. WBEZ is supported by Red Hat, presenting the event